Welcome to the Practice Purchase Podcast, Season 9, Episode 1. I am your host, Brian Hanks, and this season is all about your feelings. And no, seriously, actually, this season is about how to feel ready to buy a practice. All right, listeners, if you are listening to this season, I have a couple assumptions about you. The first assumption, I hope is obvious, is that you're a dentist or on your way to becoming a licensed dentist. Second assumption that I have for you is that at some point in your career, you might, maybe, possibly want to buy a dental practice. And if that's you, or you are somewhere along that road, even if you're pretty sure you don't want to buy a dental practice, keep listening. I have some facts that you might find interesting. And our goal in this season is to really dissect the average associate mindset around readiness. Okay? And in this episode, there's going to be a few things that will set the stage for the rest of the season. The first is plenty of validation. So if you think I'm going to lecture you, you think I'm going to talk down to you, if you think that I'm going to kind of insult the way that most associates feel, don't worry. There's going to be plenty of validation that comes your way. It is also true that in this season, we are going to talk a lot about why some of the feelings that you have may be lying to you a bit. And we'll get into more detail about that. So here is the thesis of the entire season. All right. We'll talk about it in depth in this episode, and we'll have some guests. I'll talk in some solo episodes in season 9. But the one-line thesis for this entire episode is that feeling ready is not evidence that you're incapable of or not ready to buy a dental practice. That the feeling of readiness actually follows action. And feeling ready never comes first. We'll talk about that thesis in depth. Okay, do you feel ready to buy a dental practice? If you're a student, you're a resident, you're maybe an associate out there, if I asked you honestly, do you feel ready to buy a dental practice? And when I ask that question in front of groups of folks, when I'm out speaking or if I'm on a Zoom call with a bunch of residents somewhere, it's crazy. It's maybe 1 in 10 will raise their hand confidently, but sometimes 2 in 10. The rest of the room is like, nope, I do not feel ready to buy a dental practice, which is very, very sane of the 8 or 9 of 10 of you. The 1 out of 10 that confidently raised your hand, you're my people. You have that Brian Hanks arrogance of I can do anything at any time, which of course is totally wrong. But I love the 8 or 9 out of 10 of you that admit that you don't feel ready to buy a dental practice. Okay. Couple things to listen for as we get into things. I'm going to tell you a few stories. At the end of this episode, there will be some resources, of course, free, that you can utilize around this topic of readiness. The magic link that, of course, will be in the show notes is dentalbuyeradvocates.com/ready. Okay, dentalbuyeradvocates.com/ready. And there'll be a link to book a free consultation if you want and all of those things. But where we're going with this is just a reminder in Season 9 about a couple things about the Practice Purchase Podcast. First, there will never be ads. Okay, I don't record this podcast to sell ad space. Number 2, most of these podcasts will be right around 20 minutes. The goal here is to be succinct, get to the point, not spend a lot of time throat clearing and asking the guests, if there are guests, how the weather is where they live. In exchange, if you don't mind, my biggest ask is that you grow your network by sharing this podcast with someone that you like, that you'd like to like, that you trust, or you think would find this stuff valuable. Second and less important ask is that you rate the podcast and help other people find it. But with that in mind, let me tell you a story. Recently, I was at a dental school. I was speaking to a room full of D3s and D4s. There were probably, 40, 50 folks in the room. It was 11 o'clock. It was a weekday. And I was talking to the students about, how you buy a dental practice. And I go through the logistics, just like you've listened to in the rest of these seasons of the legal side, the accounting side, the analysis side, how to find a practice, all of those things. And I had a student raise her hand, and I invited the room to argue with me a bit, and a really brave student in the back raised her hand and said, "Brian, you're crazy. Last job I had was bartending 7 years ago, in her sophomore year of undergrad. You're telling me to buy a business, but you're crazy. Running a business is a big deal. I'm going to have responsibility for the addictions of food, clothing, and shelter of other human beings. And you're telling me that I should, on top of my 300, I think, this student was going to be looking at $350,000 in student loans from this dental school. You're telling me I should go borrow another $1 million, and and you're crazy." And so I summarized it, and then I said, I put these words in her mouth, and I said, "So what I hear you saying is, Brian, you're a moron." And she kind of laughed and nodded her head, and I was like, "You are my favorite student here," because this is what every listener is thinking. It's what every student is thinking. It's what every associate is thinking. So this season is here to validate the feeling and then talk you through where some of the pitfalls are along the way with those feelings, and maybe potentially how to feel differently. All right. Here's the problem with saying I don't feel ready to buy a dental practice and then treating that feeling as if it's a decision or it's data. Okay. First, I don't want to dismiss the feeling. The feeling is real. Second, the feeling is just that. It's just one data point among many. So I'm going to give you some other data points. And I want you to consider all the data points while you think about your career. All right. The first data point I want you to think about is to think about where most dentists end up. Okay. This is a perspective shift I want you to have. This is hard data. This is from American Dental Association. There are a couple studies that have been done. And the data show that 89% of dentists end their careers as owners. Okay, 89%. And some of you listening might think, well, has that gone up? Has that gone down? Has DSO ownership shifted that? Did it used to be 99 and now it's 89? No. What's really interesting about that number is that 89% of dentists end their careers as owners, and that has held true for the last 4 decades. Okay, for the last 40 years, before DSOs even became a big deal, it was 89%. And now here we are with DSOs and corporate ownership somewhere around 15, 16, 17% of all dental practices in the US. And the number is still 89%. So if you are a dentist, it's very, very likely that you're going to end your career as an owner. And we've got other seasons to talk about why. The quick answer is money, control, and growth. Okay? Control is the big one. A lot of dentists are very smart and they want to have control over their career. Good for them. So if that's true, then if it's true that 89% of dentists are going to end as owners, and today you're listening and you don't feel ready to own a practice, then really the question is, when are you going to feel ready? So that's data point number 2, or data point number 1 that I want to share. Here's data point number 2. This is a human psychology thing. I'm on dangerous ground here. I am not a doctor. You guys are. You're on your way to becoming doctors. But I'm going to bet none of you are doctors of psychology. So I am going to talk a little bit about the paradox of why we never feel ready until we take action. All right. Think about your dental career. Again, if this is applicable whether or not you're a D1 or you're pre-dental, or you're an associate that's been out for 7 years and you're a grizzled veteran of helping people's teeth. The way you got to, think about that associate that's done 50 crowns in the last month. The way that associate got to where they are is by training, right? You got into dental school. You didn't touch a mouth for a long time. And step by step, someone trained you through the basics. They taught you biology. They taught you microbiology. You learned the Krebs cycle. You got out the mannequins. Then you brought in friends and family. And all along the way, you studied the risks, you practiced, you had people coach you, you had people give you feedback. Before, this is all training wheels, right? You had training wheels all along the way before someone actually let you put your hands inside someone else's mouth. And that is fantastic for clinical work. I love that. I love that for you guys. And it's not the only way to do things, right? There are other things you've done in your life where there was no training. You just had to jump in and do it. And so the second data point that I want to share with you is that your clinical experience, the clinical education that you've had, rewarded you for accounting for every risk. But that wiring, that way of thinking is oftentimes what sabotages smart dentists on their big career decisions, because owning a dental practice is nothing like the clinical education you've had. Well, it's not nothing like. It's just different. Owning a dental practice, jumping into ownership, whether it's a partnership, whether or not solo ownership, if you're in a group, whatever it is, ownership is more like some other decisions you've likely made in your life. One would be getting into school in the first place, right? There was no training program to become a dental student. You just had to show up and be a dental student and figure it out along the way. Most of you listening have been in a long-term romantic relationship or a marriage or something. There are marriage classes and books, but if we're all honest with each other, there was no feeling ready to be married, and being honest about what it would take to be a good long-term romantic partner to somebody. Parenting's another example. You can take all the parenting classes and read all the what to expect books that you want, but until you're holding that baby in your arms, you will never feel ready to be a parent. You just jump in by doing. And I will just tell you that ownership is a feel ready after you take action type of thing. All right. There's no practice phase for ownership. And so that's the second data point, is the feeling of I'm not ready is good data, but the answer to that feeling comes after you take action. All right. That's data point number 2. So again, data point number 1, you're probably going to end up as an owner. Data point number 2, ownership is nothing like clinical work. You have to just do before you feel ready. Okay. Data point number 3, or point number 3 that I want to make is, what do you do then? You believe me. I'm not lying to you about the 89% owner. I'm not lying to you, and it kind of it resonates on a level that it's like parenting or a romantic relationship or something like like that. But what do you do? Okay. Here's a set of actions that have worked for a lot of other dentists. And so consider that these could work for you too. And the first is to flip the question. All right? Flip the question from, do I feel ready to buy a practice, to, have I taken the actions that generally produce a ready owner? Okay? Those actions, by the way, are the other seasons that we've had. If you go back to season 1, there are 5 things that you need to buy a dental practice. Actually, there's 6, but we'll talk about number 6. 6 is season 2. But the 5 things, again, you need to have some cash. You need to have some production experience. You need to be out for a year. For GPs, if you're a resident, that doesn't apply. Military doesn't apply. And then clean credit score and clean credit history are the 5 things you need. 6th thing, of course, is you actually need a dental practice to buy. But flip the test. Don't ask yourself, do I feel ready to buy a practice? Ask yourself, have I taken the actions that generally produce a ready owner? And if you can look at yourself and say, gosh, I've done some clinical work. I can do 80% of the production of this seller that I'm theoretically looking at. I have a clean credit history. I've got some cash saved up. And you take a look at those and you ask yourself those questions, Those are the questions a bank's going to ask. Those are the questions I'm going to ask if you're a client of mine. Those are the questions a seller's going to ask as they're looking to sell you their practice. And those are data points too. So do I feel ready? And you're thinking, no. Well, ask yourself a different set of questions. Have I taken the action that produced a ready buyer or a ready owner? And if the answer to those questions is yes, treat those as data too, okay? So one set of actions you can take is to ask yourself if you've done the things that generally produce a ready owner. Okay. All right. Those actions are a big deal. The other things that you've done, if you're listening to season 9, if someone just handed you the podcast and this is your first introduction, go back. There are other seasons of the podcast that talk all about what to look for in a practice, how to analyze the numbers, what banks look at, what how the underwriters talk to you, how to negotiate with the seller. All of those things will help you feel a little bit more ready. The point that I want to make here is the only thing that gets you actually ready to be an owner is to be an owner. So I'm going to give you one last kind of funny data point. And I used this in that dental school class, and it got a few smiles and chuckles. And, I had, what did I have? 40, 50 dentists in the room. There's a class of about 100. And so I took advantage of the room a little bit. And I threw some other students under the bus. And I asked the question, okay, raise of hands. Who can think of another student, and I said, not in the room, of course, right now, that 10 years from now, you would never, ever, ever let touch your teeth? And everybody kind of smiled and chuckled. And, there are a few brave souls raised their hand. And I'd ask you the same question. If you're listening to this dental practice, think back to your dental school class of, whatever it was, 80, 100, 120. Think about your dental school class and those 5 students that just goofed off nonstop. Somehow they passed, they got through their boards, but the quality of their work and that it wasn't great, all right? Those 5 dental students, if you're out as an associate, if you've been out for a little while, guess what? 4 out of 5 of them own their practice. 4 out of 5 of them are killing it. They're making more money than you. They're not bankrupt. Their patients don't hate them. Their staff maybe hates them a little bit. But actually, 4 out of 5 of those students that you would know, that clinical work sucks. They're out there doing it. So if those people can do it, guess what? So can you. Okay. All right. Let's end the episode here. I want to give you a couple things. I've put together a free Ready Kit. Everything my clients use in that stretch before buying at, again, the link is dentalbuyeradvocates.com/ready. I'll make sure that link is in the show notes so you can find it and click on it, or you can try to type that into the buyer or into the browser. So that is the main resource. Everything there is free, no obligations. There's not going to be a bunch of spam. If you're closer than that, though, the next step is to talk to a real human being about your situation, who you are, what your goals are, the practice you may or may not be looking at, your process to find a practice. If you're ready for that, jump on a free consultation call with me or someone on my team. Link for that is in the show notes. And tell us that you heard episode 1 of season 9. If you mention Ready on the call, we'll make sure to take extra good care of you. Episode 2, we'll get into what a practice tells you about itself before you even open the books. And I've got some really good guests. I've got some actual dentists who've been through the process. This season is going to be a lot of fun. I hope you stick with me. Thank you for listening to the Practice Purchase Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.